A confession is supposed to be the most solid thing a prosecutor can bring to court. Someone sat in a room and said they did it. Case closed, right? But what if the confession was never real to begin with? What if it was something that got built, piece by piece, in an interrogation room by people who already decided what happened before they walked in? Because that's exactly what both of these cases come down to. On Halloween 2005, a 25-year-old photographer named Teresa Halbach drives to a salvage yard in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, to photograph a car for a magazine listing. She never comes home. Her car is eventually found on the property, and her burned remains are discovered nearby. The property belongs to the Avery family, and Stephen Avery, Teresa's last known contact, becomes the prime suspect almost immediately. But investigators don't just want Stephen. They want someone on the inside who can fill in the details of what happened. And so they turn to his 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey. Brendan is a quiet, withdrawn kid who has basically grown up on that salvage yard. He has a tested IQ of 73, which puts him right at the edge of having an intellectual disability. He struggles to process complex language, he's easily overwhelmed, and more than anything, he just wants people around him to not be upset. He isn't someone who pushes back. He isn't someone who fights. In March 2006, 2 detectives sit him down for an interrogation that lasts hours. No lawyer in the room, no parent. Just Brendan and 2 experienced investigators who tell him right from the start that they already know what happened, that they have proof, and that everything is going to be okay if he just tells the truth. None of that was true, but Brendan doesn't know that. What follows is hours of leading questions, gentle nudges, and a lot of, "Come on, Brendan, we know you were there." And slowly, a story takes shape. A story that happens to line up almost perfectly with what investigators already believed. When they ask him what happened to Teresa, he guesses wrong multiple times. At one point, a detective literally asks him what happened to her head, and just waits. Brendan keeps guessing until he lands on something close enough to get a reaction. By the end of it, he's confessed to being part of the murder, and then he asks the detectives if he can go back to school. He genuinely thought he was going home. When people go back through the tape later, almost every specific detail Brendan got right was one the detectives had fed him during the interrogation itself. And there was zero physical evidence connecting him to the crime. Not a fingerprint, not a fiber, nothing at all. The confession was the entire case. He recanted it 2 months later in writing. He told the jury at trial that he made the whole thing up. They convicted him anyway. Life in prison, no parole until 2048. He was just 18 years old. In 2016, a federal judge ruled the confession was coerced and overturned the conviction. Then that ruling got appealed. A full panel of judges reversed it 4-3. The Supreme Court declined to hear the case. Brendan Dassey is still in prison right now, still serving that sentence for a confession that a federal judge already said should never have been used against him. Now, take that same question, what does a confession actually prove, and apply it somewhere completely different? Because in Ryan Ferguson's case, he wasn't even the one who confessed. It was Halloween night, 2001, in Columbia, Missouri. Ryan Ferguson and his best friend Chuck Erickson, both 17-year-old high school students, spend the evening hitting Halloween parties and eventually sneak into a college bar called By George. There may be a few blocks from the offices of the Columbia Daily Tribune. That same night, a 48-year-old sports editor named Kent Heitholt leaves work at the Tribune and is found beaten and strangled to death with his own belt in the parking lot. Investigators find bloody footprints, fingerprints, and a strand of hair at the scene. None of it matches anyone. The case goes completely cold. 2 years pass, and then Chuck Erickson starts having dreams. Vivid, unsettling dreams that he and Ryan were the ones who killed Kent Heitholt. Here's the thing about Chuck, though. He was drunk and on cocaine and Adderall that Halloween night, so he has genuinely no memory of anything after they left the bar. But these dreams feel real to him, and the guilt of not knowing starts eating at him. He starts telling friends about it, wondering out loud if maybe it's a repressed memory surfacing. One of those friends goes to the police. When Chuck is brought in for questioning, it becomes clear almost immediately that he doesn't actually know anything about the murder. He can't name the weapon. He doesn't know where the body was found. He gets basic facts wrong. But detectives have been sitting on a cold case for 2 years with nothing, and they're not letting this go. So they start filling the gaps in for him. When Chuck guesses the victim was strangled with a shirt, the detective tells him it wasn't a shirt. They explain it was Heitholt's own belt. And Chuck, who had absolutely no idea about any of this 30 seconds earlier, nods and folds it into the story he's slowly constructing. By the end, he's given a full confession, and he's taken Ryan down with him as his accomplice. When Ryan is brought in, his reaction couldn't be more different. He's calm, he's consistent, and he has a clear alibi. Cell phone records confirm he was on his phone until 2:09 in the morning, after the murder already happened. His story never changes once through every single interview, but the prosecutor runs with Chuck's confession and builds the case around it, not the physical evidence from the parking lot, because none of that matched either of them, just the confession. Ryan Ferguson is convicted in 2005 and sentenced to 40 years in prison. He's 21 years old. Years later, the janitor who claimed he saw Ryan and Chuck at the scene admits he lied and that the prosecutor coached him on what to say. The other janitor, who had told police from the very beginning that the man she saw was not Ryan Ferguson, was never even asked to identify him at trial. And Chuck Erickson himself goes on record in 2012 saying Ryan is innocent, that he was manipulated, and that the confession was false. In 2013, the conviction is overturned. Ryan Ferguson walks out of prison at 29. After nearly a decade inside for a murder he had nothing to do with. Kent Heitholt's killer has never been found. And Ryan has said publicly that Chuck doesn't belong in prison either, that he was a scared and confused kid who got used by people who needed the case to be closed. When you look at what an interrogation room can do to someone who's frightened or young or just desperate for it all to be over, it raises a question that's hard to sit with. How many people have said, "I did it just to make it stop"? And how many of them are still in a cell right now because a jury heard the word confession and assumed that was the end of the story? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.